primarily on poetry right now. And we hosted a potluck fire circle poetry reading evening for the artists. So we began in our new art studio, and Chris read some of his poetry. Some of it was his environmental works.
Collecting yucca brushes. He has been climbing in barbed straw, shins parting, a scaffold of grasshoppers, only coyote trails as guide.
But he also focused on his political writings.
Wherever he goes, they tell him to shoot, and his gun agrees, poisons his kindness, owns him like a scorpion that whips across culture between the eyes. He can't accept this werewolf life of murder and being a scared father, of serving peace but cradling a metal demon baby instead.
And the evening was just a beautiful example of community coming together to share art and beautiful potluck food, a fire circle with live music and poetry that they brought with them. We also have natural found object art in the style of Andy Goldsworthy at Hamilton Cove.
I'll be there from about 8 o'clock on. Okay.
The slideshow was a highlight for many of the artists who visited that week. It was an opportunity for them to show the community and to show their fellow artists what they do in their own artwork. At Lubec Memorial Library, we had a full house. It was just amazing artwork by incredible artists. We saw a shadow puppet performance by Sienna Mayers. That was amazing, about the Depression and poverty.
When I first realized the purposes of art and how art can be used to transform a community and to be relevant to what's happening in the world, and that's in 1984. I went to Nicaragua, and I worked with a group of people to paint a mural on the side of a soap factory in Granada, Nicaragua, and I realized the purposes of art and what an artist can do in a society. And I came home and I started organizing artists to do different shows on different themes like homelessness, a theme about the quincentennial of Columbus and the New World Order, a show about converting weapons and war into peaceful things. Well, I have worked in many communities. I've supervised more than 600 murals. I've worked even up in Pleasant Point, Passamaquoddy Reservation, And I worked up in Calais. We made murals about the Champlain expedition encampment there over one winter. It's hanging in the Champlain Center, the visitor center. And over the years, I've put together a lot of shows with artists and non-artists, with adults with mental illness, with retarded people, with prisoners, and mix them in, because I really believe we all can make art, and it can be very powerful.
And here is Jill Levetsky.
One of my big concerns is beauty. And to me, beauty isn't something that's pretty, it's something that has a shadow side too. And expressing that, both seeing things that are good, that have both the positive aspects that we all appreciate, the attractiveness, but also that which disturbs us a little bit, or it has a little darker or shadow side. You know, I always enjoy the challenges that it presents. I mean, it's not always fun, and sometimes it really is a challenge, but sometimes it's like putting pieces of a puzzle together, and I enjoy that. There's always something that just keeps me engaged. And I also teach, and I love sharing this with people and having them get excited about it too. And I think it's probably the process that keeps me going, and I would guess keeps a lot of artists going, more so than the product. And I want the product to be something that I'm proud of. It isn't always, but I like trying to make that so.
And here is Barbara Sullivan's frescoes.
Anytime you have art and you've got two people sitting down, they're working together, they're sort of focusing on their art, and there's conversations that happen that are sort of in between working on art, and so you're not uptight about what you're going to say to someone, and that helps to bridge the gap between young and old. When I was working yesterday, there was a little girl, her probably 12 years old. Her mother had left her there, and she was struggling with her painting, and I was kind of focused on mine. But every once in a while I'd stop. I knew exactly what to say to her because I've made art for a long time. She was afraid to put a color, and I was never ever be afraid of adding color to your painting. And just everything, I recognize with young people, especially when it comes to art, they tend to be hesitant. They put a mark down and, oh, I can't believe I did that, it's perfect. And I don't want to experiment and change and mess it up. And that's the one thing you want to tell young people is don't be afraid. And it's having courage, crossing boundaries, doing things that you're not comfortable with. She did add a little color to it, and she liked it. And then I was like, well, remember before you liked it, before you add the color? And she's like, oh yeah. It's like, so keep adding color to it. So that stuff is great. It's just fantastic. And it's great to connect with all ages in the community.
And here is Karen Adrian.
Movement is essential to my work, quality of color as movement, and the enigmas of life are what really fascinate me in my work. The ineffable, that which cannot be expressed or pinned down. Dilemmas and issues of contemporary life also show up in my work. And basically I work like a short story writer. I create a character, a figurative character, and put them in a context, an environment, usually with animals. Since I've moved up to Maine and gotten back into my rural roots, I was raised in farmland in Nebraska and Missouri. So I relate very much to the environment of Maine, where I live on a farm. So it's that short story that creates a character and an environment and a conflict. things in movement, always moving up and changing. I hope they express some of those qualities of the enigma of change.
At a very young age, when I was a teenager, I really just got a used 35mm camera and started walking around and noticing things. I guess that impulse to be an observer and the impulse to preserve some things. I have as much interest in history and literature as I do in the visual arts, so I think photography's a rather unique medium that combines content so that, you know, what one is looking at is always present in our mind as we look at an image. But there's other levels that I like to work with. In fact, I would say the thing that I value now in my own work and what I'm looking for is I want the work to operate on 3 levels. The first one is content, because I don't think we can look at a photograph without wondering what it is that we're looking at. And the second thing that I want present in my own work is metaphor, which resonates on a different level with us, more of an emotional level than a factual level. And the third thing is innovation, or invention, sometimes I call it, which is basically doing something, taking some elements, either combining them or in a different way, or working with the materials in a different way. So that my recent work involves projections, making projections, sometimes hand-cut silhouettes, sometimes images that I project into my own room, and where I photograph the room and then I photograph the projections in the room. So it's very much like collage.
You know, all of us need to be much better citizens. And so I think of myself now as merely a citizen who's using his art to try to teach us a number of lessons about how we need to live if we want to maintain a democracy, if we want to live sustainably on the earth, if we want to have a future for our children, if we want to envision a different kind of economy that is not based on exploitation and using up the world's resources and diminishing other people so that we can live at the standard we do. I think we need to think about all those things, and I'm trying to use art in a way that enables people to have that conversation with other people and with themselves about how to live, and how to live more honestly and more sustainably. You know, I wouldn't presume to suggest to other artists that they should do what I'm doing, but for me it's the only way I can live comfortably with myself. And it has so many different forms. Like, here we are in Lubec at this moment doing this local art project, and I think, probably certainly one of the answers to how art can be used for citizenship or activism is to help deepen our communities and the relationship amongst the people in a community so that they can work together to take care of themselves better. We've been relying on forces outside of ourselves, both to shape our lives and to appeal to when we needed sustenance in some way. Probably the future will involve local communities like this one living much more dependently like they did in the past, in terms of their food and their housing and their transportation, taking care of each other by depending on each other. And the arts can play a really important role in that by helping to build community. So, I do projects now all over the United States, but I think it's in little projects like this, in particular communities, where it's perhaps the most successful.
One component of Lubec Arts Alive was the iconic sign sale, and the UMVA artists, as well as local community members, painted iconic images about Lubec. And the signs that were done by the UMVA artists have been kept to be passed out to different businesses throughout town and sponsors in the spring so that they can be on public display. The signs that were done by community members were sold at Flatiron Corner in town.